Arc Raiders received an update around 9 gigabytes in size, somewhat sizable, not the biggest update ever, but more than a quick restart of your game. So what changed? Today in this one, we're taking a look at what you should know about the update, what's new, what's changed, and what's still upcoming, along with everything in between. So drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content if you'd like to stay in the loop with all of that. I'd love to have you in the community as we chase down 700,000 subscribers together, but for now, let's get into it. So first, and the biggest thing here, was the Northline update. In lore, Speranza has discovered a secluded research facility high in the mountains, rumored to contain rare Exodus technology. However, and unfortunately, its access tunnels were demolished in hopes of leaving it untouched by whoever was there last. This is setting the groundwork for a community-led event in which players must contribute items to help Apollo in exchange for what's called merits for the restoration of said tunnels. Now, if you go to this Breaking New Ground event, you can see that you have the option to donate metal, plastic, and rubber parts along with fabric and chemicals to help the progression of this tunnel renovation. These items shouldn't be too hard to come by, as they'll all be awarded by Scrappy at the end of every single raid, level of Scrappy depending on how many you get per game, but these should be things you get passively and likely have a surplus of. I said it in yesterday's video that I usually keep at most 2 stacks of all of these items at a time, and it's usually full 2 stacks for various crafting that I'll need, but for the most part, every single raid I find myself selling off these extra 3rd stacks of items that I may have just to keep inventory management somewhat in check. So if you're like me, this shouldn't be an issue. Now, for every 5 of each material you contribute, you'll end up getting 20 merits, which right now don't have a huge meaning, but appear to be something coming a little later down the line as of recording this, not at 4:30 a.m. right as the update actually went live. But for quick maths, that's maxing out everything to each 45 parts contributed. But again, if you're like me, you have about 2 stacks of everything, it's going to take less than 1 full stack of each of those items. So you're solid on this and there's no issue at all. Now, if you don't have a full stack of these items, you should be good to also contribute other items more than just one singular one, like evenly distributed. The only thing, you're capped at 900 merits for this event, but you can contribute more if you'd like to help speed along the renovation process for those tunnels and help contribute to that community event a little further. You just won't be getting the credit for those donations past that 900 merit mark. But at that point, whenever this may be, who knows? This could be done by this video getting published. It could be something that takes a few days, but once this community event is completed, that's when we'll unlock phase 2, and when the game will see a bit more content, including Stellamontis as a new playable map for those that have played at least 5 matches, and then things like new quests that will be available following the update, and any content that is found on Stellamontis, like the mentioned new legendary gear. But beyond that, we actually did have a genuine patch to go along with this update, so actual game changes that you'll notice at a sort of fundamental level. So let's get into what changed there as well. Some of the highlights they detailed right up front are things like a reduction in character movement latency on servers to improve the desync problem where it looks like you got damaged even after behind cover. That, as we'll touch on in a second, is a very big problem. Honestly, I think one of the only problems I have with the game fundamentally right now is that there are so many times where you'll peek a corner, go back into that cover, but then get shot as if you were still out of that cover and in the open. They fixed an issue that prevented players from completing quests involving multiple objects or item collections in a single round. They fixed various achievements not working correctly. They've reduced the delay between shooting the arc and seeing an impact on its effects of the target, and they fixed various locations where players could fall through the terrain. Now, all of those we'll come back to in detail a little bit more in depth, but let's talk about some balance changes, because those, I think, while you talk about some top level adjustments made, the balancing is also just as important, I think. They changed a few things in regards to pricing, crafting requirements, unlocks, and other stuff like that. So let's just go down the list here. The Wolfpack sell price was adjusted, changing to reflect a larger value from 2,000 coins to 5,000, and additionally, the crafting a little bit more expensive as well. Before you needed 2 refined explosives and 2 sensors, now you're gonna need 3 refined explosives and 2 arc motion cores. So a bit more in quantity of the refined explosives and a little added extra step for the arc motion cores, especially if using a refiner, that it's a little tougher to find those in world, but costs a little bit more to actually make them. The arc motion core and arc circuitry in terms of its refiners have actually been made easier to obtain, where before it was requiring a refiner level 3, now you only need a level 2, but it costs a little bit more to make as a trade-off here at this. Before, both required 6 arc alloy, now you need 8 arc alloy. So a little bit more to craft those, but accessible earlier in your progression track. The launcher ammo, it changed its value again to be a little bit more expensive, where it went from 100 to 200 coins, doubling the trader cost for the launcher ammo. And to craft every 6 ammo, before it was 5 metal parts and 1 crude explosive, now it's 4 metal parts but 1 refined explosive. So again, a little bit of a tweak here in that crafting recipe. The spotter relays, the things you could pick up off of each of the snitches, that was kind of used as a money farm. This was changed in its value from 5,000 to just 2,000 coins if you decide to farm these and sell them off. So they are still, of course, very viable in terms of something that can make you quick cash for an item you can sell. Like 2,000 coins is pretty solid for an arc component that is as readily available as the spotter relay, but it's not going to yield you nearly as much. Like I saw people farming these to the point where they were getting hundreds of thousands worth in value every single run just by farming these. So that's not going to be the case anymore. Your XP values were adjusted for things like the Bastion, Bombardier, Rocketeer, and Leaper, where the XP for damage on each shot landed was changed from 3 to 2. So a minimal difference in each shot you land. But if you're ending up fighting these types of things, that actually might end up accounting for a noticeably less yield in XP once you end up taking those out. Now again, from one shot to the next, you're probably not going to notice it too much, but you may big picture. They also did change some of the XP for looting these larger arc machines in a nerf as well as a buff in some regards. So in the nerfs, the Bastion, it was changed from 500 to 250 and the Bombardier from 500 to 300 for looting those main components. But in some cases, they actually increase those values of XP to allow for a more balance between all of the different parts. Like the Rocketeer thruster before only gave you 200 as opposed to the core, which gave you 5, but now both give you 500. The Leaper leg at the same time also gives you 500 up from 200 before. But instead, let's talk about some of the, again, content and bug fixes. They talked about some of those various achievements not working correctly. That's something that was fixed where they will now track properly, but unfortunately, some of those you're gonna have to do again. Like the one they gave as an example was destroying the queen. So obviously not too fun to have to redo that if you ended up wanting to get that achievement for it, but they should be tracking properly now at this point. They fixed a few issues with animations, some of the arc getting stuck and some of their pathing and stuff like that. That stuff was fixed out. Audio, they changed a few things. One of the more minor things was they added a system default for whatever you have as your hardware. That'll now be there. You don't have to consciously select your input and output and manually assign that, but instead you can have that default. The big one to me though is the breathing audio has been adjusted for better balance between players with and without helmets, where breathing sounds are also less audible over distance. And it wasn't too big an issue, I think, but like once you play with a squad with a player who has a helmet on and you hear it every time you end up making any sort of movement, it became a bit overdone. So nice to hear that that was adjusted with this one. And they also added different audio effects to Scrappy while wearing various helmet cosmetics as well. So kind of funny with that. Cosmetics, they fixed an issue where party members would initially appear with their base appearance. It seems like also maybe some of those changes for cosmetics also went into effect for the pricing. Again, I did not pay too much attention to the shop because I was too focused on gameplay here since launch. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember seeing 2,400 coin bundles, but that's no longer the case. Again, could be wrong on that one. A couple of the maps, they just fixed some of the areas where terrain was bothersome, where there'd be collision issues and things like that. The one thing that was definitely nice though was hatches had a few issues fixed, where players can now enter and get that immunity that should be granted to them from damage and other knockbacks. I'd seen a couple of clips on Reddit where people ended up entering that hatch while an explosion came in from an arc enemy and it shot them up and out of the hatch, and then they ended up losing the ability to use that hatch further. Like it would close on them after the fact because the game registered that you left, but it kicked you out at that point. So nice to see that that was fixed. And they also increased the interaction distance for Raider hatches as well, which is also nice because I feel like you just had to basically be standing over top of the hatch hole to end up interacting with it. It's nice to be able to have some sort of grace zone where you could end up interacting with it a little further. As for some miscellaneous things, again, the big one came down to the movement latency on server to improve the desync problem. And again, mentioning it once more, that I think is probably the biggest problem here with this. So haven't jumped into any matches as of recording this just yet, other than to check out the menus and see that stuff for the new event. But if this actually is improved, that is a huge change. Like that is, again, probably one of the only fundamental issues I have with this game at the moment, is that it does produce some of those situations where it's not as competitive as I think it could be because you are dying around walls. So nice to see that that is something that is fixed. They reduced the delay between shooting an arc and seeing the impacts on the target, so they shouldn't be something that continue to shoot you through some of those shots being made. And they adjusted blueprint drop rates from Raider containers, which I think is really cool and is definitely really nice and should hopefully speed along that process of getting some of the things you're really looking forward to. A couple of other key items that were mentioned is that vaulting is now smoother. I like that. Definitely a big fan of smoothing out that kind of stuff. And then they also fixed an issue where the blaze grenade trap could deal more damage than intended, which, I mean, if you saw those clips, you could literally kill the queen with one blaze grenade trap in about 15 seconds. So like that, we knew that was going to get fixed, but to see that like immediately fixed is definitely nice. Not nice, of course, if you wanted to try and cheese some achievements out of it, but I mean, like, for the integrity of the game and how things are supposed to work, it's nice to see that fixed. And then finally, it came down to a few quests that were adjusted in terms of other noteworthy things, where they fixed an issue again preventing players from completing quests involving multiple objectives or item collections within a single round. And another one that I think is nice is the Greasing Her Palm quest on Spaceport now includes more thrusters to complete that objective. I know that that was one that I was caught up on when doing it because, like, I did it, but I couldn't quite figure out how I triggered it. So it should now be that cluster of thrusters rather than the one that is like the one spot you have to go to in specific. But nice to see that fixed out. But anyways, that is your update here for Arc Raiders and what we saw with the Northline update. Again, most of this content being relating to the community event, so take part in that. Make your contributions, be a part of helping out Speranza and getting this new map unlocked along with all the other content that comes along with it. But for right now, that's everything you need to know. So drop your thoughts down below, drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content. We've got a lot on deck that I can't wait to share with you guys. So we'd love to have you in the community, but for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. See you later. Take care and peace.